Hi, Shirley here with Spirit of Matter, and this is a snippet. It's about the core concepts that I use in my cosmology, in my readings, and also in my healing. I figured that I talked about this, but it's kind of like it was not condensed and clear, and maybe people want to have it that way so that they can get a lot of what I'm trying to say. So it's really simple. The core concept that I use, and they're driven from both physics, ancient astrology, um, and the yin yang theory. So that would be density of matter or energy, velocity. Before I get to frequency, density, velocity, temperature, and frequency. So that's like the baseline. And what you need to know in terms of the yin yang qualities is that high density, velocity, and temperature is yang. Low density, velocity, and temperature is yin. Okay, so we have something that is excessively hot, yang, excessively fast, speed. The speed in which matter goes, it creates velocity, creates temperature due to friction, or you have to have higher temperature to get something to move, and so the higher temperature creates high velocity when you have a trajectory, and of course direction is linear. That would be yang. Low density, low temperature, and again, low temperature. Why? Because when something low temperature, the atoms move more slowly, less movement, and the density is not too. When you think of gases, okay, although gases would be considered air element that is yang, but something that is low density is usually yin. If it's low density, low temperature, and low speed, that's yin. And that helps to understand a lot of concepts that I play out. It also, when I look at patients and I try to figure how they create cohesion, then I guide them to think, and I'm giving this tip to you for free. What would make me feel expansion, flow, relaxation? Okay, what would make my temperature be nourishing? What would balance my temperature? What would balance my frequency? And frequency, the best way is to use crystal or an oil, then you get the point of frequency, because frequency, yes, it's also, it's also engineering. But when I'm speaking about practical things that help us, I actually refer to the spiritual stuff of frequency, because when you channel, you do feel that something has a different frequency. You would feel the temperature, you would feel the density, you would feel the velocity it has or doesn't have. It's exciting or is it calm? And that, in a way, that altogether is a frequency. Now, when it comes to physics, I still need to get the zone in on frequency and tell you the mechanics of it, so that I can see the connection. Where is it connected? Where is it not so connected? That's definitely on my list. But yeah, the use of love frequency, or world's essential oil has the frequency of love. That's helpful. That's helpful stuff. I'm speaking of this not from a woo-woo perspective, but from a helpful, practical perspective. Okay, you get the rose quartz, you get a very high frequency, your body adjusts to it. For example, when I want to balance the yin and yang for a person, I usually, whatever I will do in the blend or in my tools or in their questions, guide them to do, is to find something that is yin yang balanced and just be exposed to that. Be it a mantra, be it a crystal, be it an oil, be it thinking about Jupiter or Jupiterian things, because Jupiter is very yin yang balanced. It is very nourishing, and I've talked a lot about Jupiter and why Jupiter and not, for example, Venus or Moon, that are still dependent on something in the way that Jupiter is a bit more independent in its archetype. So that's what I have to give. I try to think of a practical way to use that. So for people who suffer, for example, flashbacks or trauma or anxiety is, I call it a Saturnian state. It's a state of contraction. So density is actually high, even though it's a cold feeling. Yeah, so coolness is actually yin. So contraction and coolness, and then the breathing is difficult, and the nervous system is acting in a way that is more dense. So there could be overthinking. Of course, it could be caused by overthinking. I'm not going to get into causation because that would not make it a snippet anymore. And when you want to balance anxiety, you want the right amount of something that's warming, that is expansive, and that can calm down the activity of the nervous system. So this is why for an essential oil blend, I would mix something like orange, which deepens the breath without causing too much troubles. It's also solar oil, so it's warming. And a mandarin, which it's very yang in its energy, but that would definitely go into that state of contraction, kind of like by being yang, just kind of like purify everything. So I would use these, and then I would add something a bit heavier, that is yin yang balanced. So for example, elemi and sandalwood, depending on what the patient needs. Turmeric is the essential oil. Turmeric is actually very good, but with turmeric you have to be careful because it has ketones. So I don't know if I would give that to somebody who's having trauma right away, although it is a very balanced oil. But at first I would probably not necessarily use that. With the elemi I might also be careful, because I want the person to sniff it and to have good temperature. And then I think about changing the temperature, deepening the breath, so it changes the density of the energy, that it kind of makes it less dense, and then thereby changing the frequency of the person. So that's like one example that I can use. And in general, sniffing oils is very good for people who have dissociation, so that they can have something with them that brings them back to the body. Can I think of another practical case that used that? Okay, with dissociation, it's tricky, because if dissociation is so much so that the person is really off, then there would have to be an external figure doing that in the room. But if the person is still just like feeling like something is a dream or so, then playing with texture, feeling stuff, and what is texture but density, certain sort of divergence in density creates texture, right? You have something that's dense and not dense, and that can create texture. Changing the temperature in the room or in the body, cooling down, using if you use ice, use it very carefully. Don't place it on one spot for too long, because it burns. And if you tend to should be triggers now. That will add triggers. If you have triggers like for self-harm or something like that, then be cautious with what you choose with temperature. You might want to use something less extreme in its temperature than ice, maybe cool water or a cool bottle. That will give you a good result in terms of sensation. And yeah, it's the temperature, the textures, the density, and velocity. So you need to know when do you want to move and how do you want to move. and when do you want to get still. If you are having a hard time getting still, having a yang essential oil, for example, like mandarin, can actually help, because you get that yang from the oil, and you sniff the oil, and then you can sit still for a while. Or having an oil that balances the nervous system. Don't use oil without professional guidance. That's because they are, I know they're natural, but you got to know how to use them, because if you don't know how to use certain things, you could be doing some mistakes. It's very tender, it's very creative. There are many ways you can play with it, but you do have to know basic stuff, so you do need to be guided with someone who learned it, or learn it yourself in a place that's qualified to teach how to use essential oils safely. So yeah, these are like my core concepts that I use both in my cosmology and when I address clients. It's easier for me also when I read a chart. I try to get to understand the temperature of what's going on. What's the temperature play? What's the density play? What's the velocity there? And what are the frequencies that I can expect from this mess? So that helps me with that. And it can also help with understanding whether something is yin or yang when you reduce it to temperature, density. With frequency, it's interesting, because frequency, high frequency, I wonder if it's yang, because it's not like low frequencies yin and high frequencies. There's something different happening with frequency that I don't quite get. But that's it. That's for the snippet. I just wanted to I hope I laid it clear. We are in a Mercury retrograde, having uncanny aspects to Neptune. I'm not sure if it's still in aspect. So yeah, that might not have been the best election for clear stuff. But I did feel calling to explain these concepts so that you can play with them, especially when you watch my videos, when you read my stuff, so that you can get deeper into the way my mind ticks. And also, if you have something that you would want to criticize, or that you would want to do differently, or that you do differently, you can get what I'm doing, so you can get exactly what your criticism is and what works for you differently, which I'm very open to hear. Yeah, and of course, being embodied, being in the body, feeling theories in the body, feeling the temperature, the density, the velocity, the frequency in the body. I don't know if it would work for everyone. I've tried this with my best friend. It was wonderful. He felt general relativity theory, I think, in the head, and especially in the heart. And the first question he asked me, even before I told him where does he feel these things, was, why do you want to integrate them? After he told me that, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. It's a good thing to do alignment between the head and the heart. So this is where you would get with channeling science. I might do a video if I get him to show up on camera. That would be great. I might do a video of me channeling science, which is a really cool experiment. It's just saying the name of it, thinking about the theory, saying a theory, and feeling in the body what energy do I get. I don't know if that's useful, but it's really fun. And it's a part of the experiments that I do. So we're getting a bit more than a snippet, but hey, it's not an hour-long video. I'll send you off and see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.